Evening, people. How are you doing? Welcome. It's 8 o'clock, just gone 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night, which can only mean one thing. It's the Sports Therapy Association podcast, recorded live. So if you are listening to this podcast and you're thinking, oh, wow, I could join live and ask the guest speaker some questions directly, then all you got to do is head along to the Sports Therapy Association YouTube channel and at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday. That's GMT +1, so UK time at the moment, and you can join us live for the recording. Also this month, because we're doing nutrition, it's such an important topic for so many people, then this episode is also going out on the Run Chat Live podcast. So thank you for joining us from Run Chat Live podcast. And also it's going out on Run Chat Live Facebook page, because that's my little creation as well. But yeah, this is a Sports Therapy Association podcast. And already we have people coming into the room joining us live. It's a great way of mixing with other soft tissue therapists, especially if you're in the UK, because you're bound to have people coming in from your region of the UK. So you can network, ask questions. You don't have to be an STA member. You can come along and have a look about what the STA is all about. And it's like we always say, it's free CPD. You know, we are bringing you, I mean, I'm biased, obviously, because I choose the guests with us some help, obviously, from Big Gary. But we're bringing you information which we think will be useful to you. And not only is it something you can use in your CPD folder, but also gives you an opportunity to investigate further with our guests' websites and courses and all these sort of things. So if you do decide to join us live, I can bring your comments up on the screen. So Becky Carroll is with us, first through the gate as always. How are you doing, Becky? Thanks for joining us. Andy Glover is also here saying hello, peeps. And you can't see this, obviously, if you listen to the podcast, but their names are appearing on the screen. Along with your logo. If you're trying to kind of get your logo out there, that's a great way for networking, that sort of stuff. We are going to do a focus on business soon. I'm just getting guests together for that. So that'll be an interesting one if you're interested in how to get your logo out and branding and all that important part of the business, which often lacks when it comes to CPD. Catherine Reimer's here as well. Catherine Reimer says, hi, everyone. Sorry I missed last week. Forgiven, Catherine. You said sorry. That's the most important word. Thank you. I completely forgot what day every day was last week. Sounds like you. Maybe it's nutrition. Maybe you should diet, Catherine. Maybe you should have a word with tonight's guest maybe about that if your memory's going. I don't know. But anyway, you've caught up. Thanks, Catherine. Great. Thanks for coming along. So before we get into tonight's episode, I would like to thank, obviously, last week's guest, the one and only Matt Fitzgerald. I've had comments already saying, Matt, you really like this, Matt, don't you? And I do. And apologies if I came across as a little bit sycophantic and kind of like all over him, kind of a man bromance thing last week. But he's just, I mean, it amazes me that runners don't know about him, and therapists who work with runners. I mean, just look. You can watch it on YouTube, okay, and you'll get a better idea of what I'm talking about. But I'm going to show the slides I had here, the books he's written over the last, let's have a little think, probably since 2000. So the last 22 years we're talking now. And I've been with him since 2006 or so with brain training for runners, which was amazing. There's so many books out there, probably over 30 in total. And if you do work with runners or you're a runner yourself or an endurance athlete, check out Matt Fitzgerald, fantastic sports nutritionist as well as amazing endurance runner. So well worth checking him out and checking out the website 8020 Endurance for a lot of free stuff. And as well, it's a great resource if you've got runners who do need some coaching tips and plans and that sort of stuff. Really good. I've got a lot of runners who work directly with that website and with Matt and his team, and they're always satisfied. So thanks, Matt, again for joining us. I really appreciate your time. Nutrition continues this week with a subject which I think I remember being asked for ages ago. It might even have been Becky who asked for it, but somebody was definitely talking, let's talk about food intolerances and allergies and food sensitivities and all this sort of thing. Really interesting, not just for our clients, but also for ourselves. How many therapists do you know who kind of like have got symptoms of something going on? It could be overwork, could be stress, could be something to do with the diet, all interrelated. So I'm sure we'll be touching on that tonight as well. I'm delighted to bring you one of the leading UK biochemists and scientific director at YorkTest Laboratories, Dr Gill Hart. If you haven't heard of YorkTest, then you should have heard of them basically, because they've been around for at least 40 years, leading the way when it comes to food intolerance tests and food allergy tests. I'm really excited that their director, scientific director, has come to give us her time. So as always, if you've got questions, throw them in. I've told Dr. Hart that she can shut me down straight away and ask one of the questions to come up on the screen. So do feel free if you want to. And if you listen to the podcast, then it doesn't stop here. If you've got questions, then feel free to either email me directly, matt@thesta.co.uk, or you can go to the YouTube channel, leave comments there. And there will be details at the end of how to contact YorkTest and Dr. Gill Hart directly as well. So I think that's everything done. I haven't missed anything out. So without further ado, let's bring up Dr. Gill Hart of YorkTest Laboratories. Dr. Hart, how are you?
Oh, very well, thank you. And thank you very much for inviting me this evening. I'm absolutely thrilled to bits to be here and great to be talking to you.
You come heavily recommended. I've known about YorkTest for a while, but I've never had the pleasure of knowing your name. So it's an honor to have you along. So I really appreciate it. It's a great topic that so many people are excited by. So I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, it's a topic I'm really, really passionate about. So I'm looking forward to talking to you tonight.
Well, I imagine you are, because you've been with YorkTest for how long are we talking now? When did you join them? Beginning of 2000 somewhere?
2005 I joined YorkTest, so it's been 17 years.
I'm sure it doesn't seem like it.
No, it's gone in a flash actually, and you know, it's been a great time actually, and still is within the company. And you know, the main thing that motivates me within the company is the fact that we do make a difference to people's lives through our food intolerance testing, also allergy testing, and our other home health tests as well that we offer. So, you know, that's what motivates me. And hearing stories, I know that you'd mentioned about Gary's, and mentioned to me as well about the experience of people getting better when they've changed their diet, which is
we do know some people in common who literally has been a life changer just by being connected to the right person, the right professional. And that's been, as we were talking about off air, anyone who's joined in our shows, that's been quite a common theme. And it's something I just want to reiterate again, because it's equally as important tonight. As massage therapists, people often we're the first port of call for someone who's in pain. Wherever the symptom is, they just think I need to lie down for an hour and just relax, and a massage will help me feel better. And this includes maybe kind of abdominal cramps and things like that, and just a sense of disease, which could be to do with, we'll see later on, with food intolerance or an allergy of some form. So we've got quite a big responsibility. If we ask the right questions in our subjective assessment of them, we can direct them to people like yourselves, the same way as we can work with female pelvic health specialists and male pelvic health specialists and rheumatologists, and we've looked at sleep disorders, so many things we could help with, as long as we're well linked within health professionals. So do you find that you do work with other practitioners? Do you find other practitioners sending people your way?
Absolutely, yeah. We work with many different types of practitioners, obviously nutritional therapists, but through all sorts of disciplines, through to the medical profession as well, referring through to us and our services. And we support practitioners. We often don't need to, but we can also support practitioners with nutritional support as well, because we have a BANT registered nutritional therapists on board that work with us and help support our customers and practitioners as well.
Fantastic. So for people who aren't aware of YorkTest, just saying hello to Caroline Arnold. Thank you very much. Glad you should join us. And Glenn Murphy, thanks for joining us. People are still coming in. A little bit late, people. I'll expect a little excuse and a letter after why you're coming in at 9 minutes past 8. But let me just bring up on the screen a little grab of the website I did. There we go. You can talk us through it, Dr. Hart. How did you start with YorkTest back in 2005?
Well, I mean, as you mentioned, I'm a biochemist. I'm actually a PhD in pituitary function, so female hormones is a great interest to me as well, actually. And my career has been through to start with in the NHS as a senior biochemist at Hammersmith Hospital, but then actually working with companies developing hospital tests from scratch, so things like your hormone tests, infectious diseases, etc. So when I came across YorkTest in 2005, it was a very exciting business for me, because we've got a fantastic laboratory, which I can talk about later, right through to the customer and practitioner that we support all in one sort of building. And for me, that was really exciting. And also what struck me really, as somebody who's many years of developing tests, was the quality of the work that was done and the care duty of care, quality control and reproducibility and accuracy of the tests that we were producing and manufacturing ourselves. We actually developed ourselves, YorkTest developed the first food-specific IgG test, which is what we're going to talk about today, in 1998. So it was a spin-out from, York University scientists, and, that test was very novel then. Tests such as those were, early days of those sorts of tests, and we're really proud that we've been able to offer that food-specific IgG test that we manufacture ourselves in our accredited laboratory, for 24 years now. So, yeah, we're really proud of that.
I think the fact that the company itself has been around for so long, delivering the services, and the fact you've been with that company since 2005 is testimony to the company, ticking the boxes for you to stick around, someone of your experience. Yes. Then that. What is the secret? I mean, we talked a little bit before. I mean, I've been in the game for longer than I wish to admit, and for me, I've seen a lot of these food testing kind of almost like weekend courses come and go. I've worked in gyms and fitness areas which have like a beauty salon. Nothing against beauty salons, but the number of times I've seen suddenly a hairdresser having a great, give me a hair from your head and I'll give you the results in 24 hours. There's a lot of that in this industry, isn't there? Unfortunately, does that harm your ability to actually get the message through to people we can help, or are you fine with that? It just allows you to stand out.
I think it's it's a really good question. I think, when I joined in 2005, there was a lot of Vega testing around. You put your finger in a box in Holland and Barrett and, get energy levels and, you get a food intolerance printout and also talking about viruses and all sorts of other things. I mean, obviously that was absolutely no basis in science at all. That's evolved now to hair testing. And what we see now is that, hair tests are available. Send a piece of hair in, they get put into a box, some sort of machine which gives you energy levels. Again, no basis in science at all, and I think that is damaging to the industry because, in the main there are credible companies like YorkTest really providing an excellent service and helping people on a day-to-day basis. And those sorts of tests should not be available and shouldn't be allowed, but it's what we have to live with, really. And so when you're looking for a food intolerance test, it is really important to look at a company that has got the heritage, but also we're really focused on the evidence base behind what we do and provision of evidence too.
That's really healthy, and it's great. And I mean, we see it in all industries. Whenever there's such a large amount of people have a problem with an issue, then you're going to see so many quick fix solutions and things appearing. So it's healthy for us to actually hear that it happens to other industries as well.
I think when you talk about people having symptoms, I think that's a really good point because I mean I was looking at our recent stats. We gather a lot of information. We have quality management reviews twice a year where we review all our survey data and feedback and our stats. And I was looking at our recent stats just before I came on air, and for us, about over 80% of people that have come to us with symptoms have been suffering for more than a year, and actually over 25% more than 10 years. So these are people have been suffering with symptoms like digestive problems. It might be low energy, low mood, muscle, joint pains, skin problems, headaches, migraines, etc. They've been suffering a long time, and often they have sought help elsewhere. And they may have got some benefit, but they still feel that there's something going on for them, and they don't know where to start. They think, well, where can I begin? We know that you can start by doing an elimination diet, which is the gold standard. But if you have no knowledge at all about where you're going to start, is it this or is it that? It's virtually impossible to determine the exact combination of foods that you might be reacting to just by guessing and trial and error. And so what we provide at YorkTest is a route map for an elimination diet, a starting point. So rather than starting with no knowledge at all, you can come in and say, well, actually, my IgG, my antibody IgG, and that's what we actually measure in the blood, food-specific IgG antibodies. My IgG levels are raised. That's not usual, and therefore, if I, choose to take those specific foods out of my diet that have got those antibodies, then, that's giving me a starting point for my elimination diet.
Yeah, very, very interesting. We'll talk about the IgG tests in a second. First thing I've got to, I promised I would ask this question, because even, I think it's a question that affects a lot of people. The difference between an allergy and a food sensitivity, and the words which we kind of throw around, sometimes it's almost, we feel it's synonymous, but in your line of business, there's quite a big difference between the two, and it's important to establish what's going on.
It really is. Food allergies involve, obviously, your immediate reaction, potentially life-threatening. It tends to be to things like your peanuts, your milk, eggs, shellfish. It involves an antibody type IgE, so that's different to the food intolerance antibody that we measure, the IgG. We do offer food allergy testing as well, though. So food allergies are, tend to develop in childhood. Once you've got them into adulthood, they tend to be for life. Food intolerances are very different. And actually, the word food intolerance covers an awful lot of different types of tests. So some people think of maybe lactose intolerance, maybe chemical sensitivities, things like reactions to, caffeine or sulfites, things like that. They might think about celiac disease, obviously an autoimmune condition reacting to gluten. They might think about FODMAPs, the fermentable small chain carbohydrates that can cause reactions. All of these are different types of food intolerances, but these aren't things that have all got tests for. You can't test for, caffeine reactions, etc., sulfite reactions. But so what we do is actually look at the IgG reactions for food intolerance. And that's the sort of food intolerance that we look at YorkTest.
So how we recently had a month devoted to sleep, and without kind of causing people to catastrophize and kind of worry about things for too long, we were talking about how high the prevalence of sleep disorders are, and people putting up with feeling tired throughout the day because they are waking up more than 3 times a night, because they are getting sometimes just even less than 7 hours sleep can make a big difference. So what's the prevalence like for food intolerances? Is it something which people don't realize, how many people suffer from it?
I don't realize. The prevalence worldwide of food intolerance and food related reactions is like about 100 million. It's just huge. But actually, if you look at, the best stats were from Allergy UK some time ago, and they estimated that 45% of people actually suffer from some sort of food intolerance reaction. And I think that that's probably a good estimate. There aren't very good stats on this, but I think that would, that sits about right, I think. And we all know of people, that do react to foods and prefer not to eat foods. It may be that they disagree with them in some way, and it's not always that obvious. A lot of people think that being tired is normal, where and it becomes normalized for them. They might feel tired or achy or have a gut problem, but they think that's just the way they are and the way they're made. But underneath it, and quite often we find people that come to YorkTest with a digestive problem, say bloating or IBS, and change the diet, and it resolves that bloating and IBS, but also their energy levels are improved, or they've got a lighter mood, or the skin clears up and things like that. So it covers a whole sort of gamut of different symptoms.
Very interesting. I've got a few questions coming here from people who've joined us. Catherine Reimer, I'll read it out for people listening to the podcast. Catherine Reimer says, I have a YorkTest still to do to see if I have any intolerances, but also hopefully to help with my arthritis. I've been told high protein diet can help along with exercise. Comments?
Well, I'm not a nutritional therapist, so I can't really advise very well on the diet side. But what I would say is that if you think about the IgG reactions, the food-specific IgG antibody that we measure, that has got pro-inflammatory properties. So if you look at the way that it then goes on to act within the immune system, particularly there's 4 types of IgG, 1, 2, 3, 4, and particularly 1 and 3 are, we measure all 4 types at YorkTest again, and that's a really important thing. But IgGs 1 and 3 are pro-inflammatory, and there have been links with raised IgG antibodies and arthritis symptoms. So people with joint pains and muscle pains can, have reported back to us that they have felt better. And again, I was looking at some of our stats before I came on air, and probably about 15 to 20% of people that come to YorkTest have suffered with muscle and joint type pains out of our stats. So it is, it's something that people do come to us for help with.
Very interesting. Great question. Thanks, Catherine, for sharing. I hope you get some results with it. We'll have to do a follow-up then. If it's successful, we'll have to do a follow-up. It'd be great to hear how it goes on, Catherine. Caroline Arnold has also said, have done my tests with York. Let's bring it up on the screen. Caroline Arnold says, I've done my test with York Labs recently. A bit more secretive, Caroline, with that. That's fair enough. You can elaborate if you want to, but you don't have to, obviously. But yeah, so it's great. Obviously, I mean, it is a very a company with a great reputation, which is great. You mentioned then, and I didn't want you to let you get away with it, because it was interesting how you said we do test for all 4 of the IgGs, which is important. Is that kind of suggesting that other cheaper variants on the market only test for 1 or 2 of them, or?
There are offerings that are just offered for IgG4, and actually IgG4 is the one subtype. It's very low percentage in the blood anyway. It's only a few percent, but it actually is. It can be more protective. You used to think about raising IgG antibodies to protect the body. The IgG4 one is particularly protective, whereas some of the other subtypes are more pro-inflammatory, and that's why it's really important to measure all 4 subtypes. The other advantages with IgG antibodies is that they're very stable. So we actually use a blood collection system that is very easy to use. And I think there is a slide on that. If we wanted to show it now, we can show it later.
We could bring out some slides.
Yeah, but we actually collect the blood onto a little wand, which is really easy. It's like a little stick, and it just draws up. That's a picture there. Just draws up a few drops of blood onto the little wand, and that the blood on that is really, really stable. So when you actually put it back into the little vial and send it off to our laboratory, we've got a stability of up to 30 days, because IgG is very stable in that situation, which means that when we get the blood in our laboratory, we can process it and measure it using our manufactured tests and in quality control. So yeah, we're really proud of our lab. We've got a great guy, Rob Wilson, our lab director, who's got 25 years experience in the NHS. He's an HCPC registered biomedical scientist, and we've got a great lab team at YorkTest. We've also got accreditation to international ISO standard 13485 and medical devices, which means we're audited annually by SGS, who represent the MHRA, and they come in once a year to check that what we're doing is all on track, which it is. So we're really proud of our laboratory and our accreditation as well.
It's great to hear, and involved a lot in research as well.
Yeah, we have over the years. YorkTest have. We're involved really early on, actually, in the early 2000s with the very first randomized control trial in IBS. So we used the YorkTest, and it was run by the University of South Manchester with Professor Orwell heading that up, and it was published in the BMJ Gut. So it was a really high class study, and we actually showed for the very first time that those taking a true YorkTest diet compared with a sham diet actually had a significant improvement in their IBS. Now, since that was published in 2004, I think it was, there have been lots more studies in IBS that have been published, randomized control trials and other trials, and also in inflammatory bowel disease, things like Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, that shows that an IgG guided elimination diet is effective, and significantly effective in trials. So similarly in migraines, other studies as well. There's been quite a lot of work in low mood, depression, and other conditions too now. So it's a really interesting time actually, because I feel like we developed this in 1998, and in the early days, you know, the science was there, but we were sort of helping forge that science. And now I feel like the science has caught up or is catching up, and there is so much more in the literature now, you know, to evidence base what YorkTest are doing. And it was a particularly interesting article that was published recently that she actually compared a gastroenterologist proposed diet versus a low FODMAP diet, which is the fermentable low chain polysaccharides, versus an IgG diet based diet, which is obviously what YorkTest offer. And the IgG diet came out on top for people with IBS. So, I mean, again, that is encouraging proof of what we actually see every day and we hear every day back from our customers.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, look, funny you should say that, because Caroline Arnold has now become your biggest fan. Has totally opened up with what's going on. Thanks for that, Caroline. So done your tests. So let's bring this up. Caroline Arnold says, my test showed I'm allergic to wheat and intolerance to cow's milk and egg yolk, ! Quite common, those ones, aren't they? Well, not everybody, but I mean, if anything's going to show up, I believe that, the wheat is often there, isn't it? Is it something, being someone who's followed this along the years, is the quality of food, is a relationship between our diet and the quality of the food we're consuming related to an increase in tolerances, or is it on the rise, do you think? And is it causation, correlation, or what?
I do think it's on the rise, and I think it's related to a lot of different things. I think particularly the quality of food, you know, people are eating a lot more processed food and with a lot of different additives. And if we think about the gut membrane is very fragile, you know, 70% of your immune system is in your gut. Your gut microbiology is really important to keeping that immune system active and on top of things. And eating, you know, processed foods, additives, things that aren't really supposed to be eaten almost. And obviously the you know, things like environmental factors as well, pollution, like that can affect the gut as well. So I do think that is, I think the sort of the Western diet, things like alcohol and, you know, really can exacerbate gut permeability. And gut permeability, when you've got like a leaky gut, it can allow larger food particles through into the bloodstream, and you're more likely then to say, actually, there's a, you know, this doesn't look right, and the immune system is activated, particularly when you've got a compromised gut microbiology alongside it. I was really interested actually to, you know, reading about a lot of athletes. I mean, 30 to 50% of athletes, you know, I was reading, you know, suffer from gut problems, and a lot of high intensity training can actually impact the gut and actually cause more permeability. So I think, you know, from a performance point of view and sports performance point of view, actually protecting that, you know, that area, if you're talking about, you know, wanting to get peak performance, your best energy levels, you know, the best gut function, etc., then that's something to consider too. You know?
Yeah, very interesting. And Matt Fitzgerald last week, who's done a lot of studies, traveling around countries, any excuse to travel for Matt, but spending time with elites from different countries to try and work out if there is such a thing as the perfect optimum diet. And obviously there's not, because he saw amongst elites there's variance. He came out with a great comment saying if there was one perfect scientific based diet for endurance, then it certainly wouldn't be culturally based, because people in Japan obviously excel in some sports and in Kenya others. So the variety was there. And he was basically saying what you're saying is the amount of processed foods that sadly people eat a bit of everything. That's great. Don't deny yourself of anything. A lot of diets are based on don't eat this, don't do this, don't do that. And he was much more from do whatever you like, but just follow these 5 principles of variety. And it's tricky, isn't it? Our lives are very much not like that. We're often told not to do something, and
I'm absolutely fascinated by the gut microbiology, and you know, certainly there's been some really, and there's a really interesting paper just come out. I can't remember the name now. Cataldi et al. Just come out, and actually it looks at physical exercise and the impact that has on the gut microbiology, so the different types of bacteria that are present in your gut. So there's like different sort of strains of bacteria that are prevalent that obviously have different functions, from people like ultra marathon runners versus rowers, but and so this is going to be a huge area in future, I think, because people can actually start to really understand what's going on in terms of the gut microbiology. I was interested that you picked up, when we're talking about Caroline's results, she's reacting to, cow's milk and wheat and things like that. I think, she's, and you said, oh, that's, the sort of, that's quite common. I think it is and it isn't. I think, people will be surprised about the sort of, we call it a fingerprint of, reactions that people react to, because often it's the things you don't think, you think you're eating healthily, it might be the protein in carrots you're reacting to, or it might be lentils or soya or, other things that you might not always consider. And obviously people, if you eat a lot of wheat, you've got, I guess, a higher probability of reacting to it, but it isn't always the key ones that are causing the problems. And that's why it's, I think, really important to do a test and find out your particular pattern of reactions, because it can be quite a surprise sometimes. We get quite a lot of people reacting to yeast and they think, oh, that's a surprise. I wouldn't have thought that. Having a problem with bread, and is it the yeast, is it the wheat, or is it something else in there that's causing a problem?
That's really interesting, and that might be a product of the fact that a lot of the people who have had tests, maybe cheaper, less accurate tests, the results do come up with these time and time again, as opposed to doing a more in-depth test and coming up with something a little bit more obscure. Because most of the people you do meet, oh yeah, the food intolerance test, oh yeah, apparently I'm allergic to wheat. I mean, I hear that from anyone who's had a food intolerance test. They seem to be singing about that, or gluten intolerance or something, but you rarely hear people. So maybe
it does vary a lot. I mean, I had my first test obviously when I joined YorkTest, and I've been doing every year since. And I've never reacted to wheat or gluten, but I'd react very strongly to cow's milk, and I do every year. I mean, I cut out cow's milk with the majority of the time, but I still have a little bit of it, and I still have that as a consistent. But my other ones are a small amount of egg white, and then often like flaxseed, linseed will come up as well. So and if I have more soya, then soya will come up too. So and that's just a few. It's about 5 things, and and that's, as I say, on average, people with positive reactions tend to come up with that sort of number. I'm just reading Caroline's response actually, because she said she's 5 weeks into her diet, and I found big changes with my IBS, energy, mood, and hoping my migraines will ease. Definitely headache easing. Isn't that fantastic? And thank you so much for that feedback, Caroline. It's something that, as I say, we get feedback about every day at YorkTest. We are really proud of our evidence base and our and thank you, Caroline, for that recommendation. We do capture feedback every year, and we originally published back in 2007. We had a study that was carried out by York University that looked at 5,286 people that had taken the York test at the time. We detected 113 different reactions there, and we extended our panels since that, and up to over 200. But and 76% of people that took the test reported back that they felt benefit, and of those that adhered to the diet rigorously, 68% found the benefit within 3 weeks. Now that I use that as my bench. We published that. That's all published. I think we've got some of the data actually on a slide if you wanted to show it. But I've already gone. I've kind of described it anyway. So if you could use through the slides, the next one. I think that one, yeah. So yeah. There's those 2. That's right. So that one's the study that we published with the University of York as Hardman and Hart in 2007. So you can see that overall 76% of people reported a feeling of benefit. It is a survey. You know, it's not a randomized controlled trial, but I think this reflects what we're seeing generally. And you can see that musculoskeletal, joint pain, rheumatism, arthritis, you know, is about 64% of people, up to, you know, gastrointestinal. And interestingly, there's sort of the anxiety, low mood as well that people benefit from. Now, the next slide actually shows that, you know, this is just a starting point for us. Every year we survey, and, you know, I've captured some of those here, 2015 up to 2021 here. And, you know, it's a few hundred each year. In 2021, we captured 565 people, fed back to us that 81% of them reported a benefit from taking the test and changing the diet. And often that's with nutritional therapist support as needed, because we do provide that too if that's needed. And, you know, we're really proud. And that, you know, those are my benchmarks for me. Obviously, we analyse this data twice a year, and you know, I always look to see that we're carrying on the consistency, because that is my ultimate test of that our test is working, that we've got our quality controls in place in our laboratory. We do reproducibility testing weekly in our laboratory to show that we have greater than 98% reproducibility from 2 samples collected at the same time. And that for me, you know, shows that, you know, we're on track as a company still.
It sounds very good.
It really explains the longevity that we have had as a company too. You know, that we continue to help people like Caroline.
Definitely, what the words you're saying will ring bells with anybody who's been doing, because we've had quite a few people and guests who offer therapists ways to look at studies and research and look at the quality of research and decipher what could just be a self-promoting thing and something which actually is looking at reproducibility in things and reliability and all that. So hopefully with some of you listening, these words will ring true. Let's go to, if I can, the audience. So we've established that as long as we get these people to you, essentially, then we can change lives, which is great. Let's look at some of the symptoms maybe, and in doing so, look at the different types of food intolerances out there. Imagine therapists. It could be anything from a sports massage therapist, or it could be a sports therapist, maybe somebody who's seeing just an occupational issue, it could, all the way up to an elite athlete. What are some of the symptoms that should, in theory, be ringing bells when we do question or examine people, and make us start thinking, you know, we should give you a card and refer you out to YorkTest? Yeah,
I mean, the first thing I'd say is that, you know, if people are having regular symptoms, they should always be followed up by their doctor anyway, you know, and a GP. And often the people that come to us, as I mentioned, you know, greater than 80% of people have been, or 90% of people have been suffering over a year. You know, we'd always encourage people to go to the doctor anyway and get checked out. And it's often ongoing chronic symptoms, things like, you know, your IBS, your bloating, your migraines and skin rashes, and things that you know, you've been to the doctor, you've been checked out, make sure there's nothing serious going on, or, you know, you've had some professional support with that, and you still feel like there's something going on for you. So I think particularly gut problems. It may be diarrhea, constipation, stomach cramps. It may be general aches and pains, or low energy, or not feeling that you're at your best. It may be weight distribution. You know, maybe sometimes feeling that you can't lose weight or you can't gain weight. Indeed, in some cases. And also things like respiratory problems, sort of maybe runny nose or glue ear. Had sort of children with glue ear, things like that, with tummy pains as well, and things like sort of migraines and headaches. So those tend to be the sort of symptoms where people come to YorkTest, and, you know, they've already been checked out, but they're still ongoing for them, and they just can't seem to work out what's going on.
Interesting.
And that's where we can come and help.
Is that suggesting that, and obviously we can't tar all GPs with the same brush, and there's always problems of lack of time and all these sort of things, but we've seen with other issues, for example, hypermobility and a lot with female pelvic health, that maybe things can be missed by the GPs. Is that potential as well with food intolerance?
Yeah, I think I think with nutrition, you know, there isn't really. I think that, you know, there is clearly dietetic support from the NHS, but there tends to be more medical, you know, medically to meet a medical need. Whereas I think general nutrition and, you know, things like food intolerances aren't things that, you know, the food-specific IgG test sadly isn't available on the NHS. And I think if you go to sort of IBS type symptoms, there are limited resources available to support people with IBS. So, you know, there are some very good clinics, and Professor Walwell's clinic in South Manchester is excellent, but there are more limited routes that can be explored. And so sadly, people once something, you know, it's something serious, anything serious has been ruled out, they tend to say, well, it's nothing serious, nothing to worry about, just sort of carry on with your life. And I think that's where people still want to explore clearly what's going on for them. And a lot of people with IBS, it's, you know, they can't actually go out because they have to be near a toilet, they have to be near facilities. It impacts the social life. It's similarly with, as you know, migraines and, you know, skin problems, etc. And you know, that's where a lot of people still sit even after support. So, you know, that's where people often come to us.
And what about you mentioned like your interest in gut bacteria. Let's imagine we have got a high performing athlete who's coming to us. What are some of are they going to be, presumably if they're still competing, then they haven't got persistent diarrhea or something, because they just wouldn't be able to compete. But what are some of the symptoms that maybe a high performing athlete might have, which might ring some alarm bells for you?
Well, I do think the bloating and abdominal cramps and things like that, I think and they can and still suffer from diarrhea as well, and constipation and those sort of digestive problems. But I think I think energy levels are particularly important as well. And although the gut's involved, obviously the gut microbiologist there, you know, sort of working with you within your gut to help protect the gut. Although the IgG antibodies are formed in the bloodstream because of maybe a leaky gut, or because the immune system's compromised, those IgG antibodies can go on and form complexes that can sort of impact inflammation all over the body, and that's why they come out in different ways, you know, causing different symptoms and can be associated with different symptoms.
Okay, great stuff. So yeah, so what I've gathered from that was particularly, and it's very similar, there's parallels with other topics we've looked at, if they've been to see a GP and then kind of just got the impression they just have to put up with it, and it's one of those things where you don't have to be putting up with this, it's just you haven't seen the right person maybe. Great advice.
Yeah, sorry, no, I mean, I think too that you know, people often live with things, as I said earlier, that are normal for them. And actually, it's not until you change your diet and that you can actually see that you know you have got that potential to have that extra energy or that extra bit of quality of life too. And again, this isn't, you know, me saying it. This is what the feedback we get from people that come to YorkTest.
Okay, question, if I may, from Phil Griffiths. Thanks for joining us tonight. Phil asks, where do you stand regarding pre and probiotics? They seem to be everywhere and have huge claims regarding gut health. Good question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that you're absolutely right. They do seem to be everywhere, and there are big claims regarding gut health. I think that our nutritional therapists at YorkTest certainly use probiotics when we're talking about, you know, gut healing, if you like, because if you come to YorkTest, take a test, and you eliminate the foods from your diet, you tend to do that for about 3 months. And obviously, if you've got a longer list of foods, we'll prioritise. We've got a results which we can show you that, you know, we've got a scale of 0 to 100 for each of the foods, and you can see which need to be prioritised. And once, alongside that elimination, a nutritional therapist will usually start talking about gut healing. So it might be digestive enzymes are needed, or probiotics to re-inoculate the gut. And with all that working together, then after 3 months, you can start to sometimes reintroduce foods back into your diet. So food intolerances, you know, tend to be delayed. And, so an allergy is an immediate reaction, but a food intolerance tends to be delayed. So what you eat, or maybe on a Saturday, you might get a reaction to maybe on a Tuesday or something like that. So people quite often don't pick up that they've got reactions. And the other thing about food intolerance is that they're not necessarily for life. So when we're talking about, probiotics and gut healing, after 3 months, you can start to reintroduce foods back into your diet one by one and just see whether they are still impactful for you. And some people can tolerate a little bit of something. I have cow's milk, for example, in tea and coffee, but I wouldn't have cheesecake or ice cream or cheese because I know that would impact me if I had it over a period of time. So, I think there is a role for pre and probiotics. I think that there is varying qualities available, and I think choose wisely. And if you can, talk to a nutritional therapist about, what they would advise rather than just picking some off the shelf, because there are a huge range of different types.
Great answer. Good question as well, Phil. Come back, Phil, if you want to follow up on that. That's a really good question. It's definitely a topic that people should know about. Got some more going down here. Let's have a look. Affinity Bodyworks. Oh, Affinity Bodyworks. That's a gamble. Nicola or Sarah? Can't remember. Damn it. You have to tell me. Sorry, Affinity Bodyworks. You won't mind me. Affinity Bodyworks says, I had a York test around 10 years ago. It was somewhat accurate and a starting point. Low FODMAP was a better option eventually, and now I'm trying out the Nerva app. Okay.
I don't know what the Nerva app is. The low FODMAP, yes. I mean, low FODMAP is often used in conjunction with the IgG-based diet alongside it, and so that nutritional therapists will often talk about reducing. So low FODMAP foods are fermentable, short-chain carbohydrates, polysaccharides, oligosaccharides, monodisaccharides, and polyols. So they can get through into the lower part of your intestine, your colon, and they can start to ferment, and they can cause a lot of bloating and pain and problems. So often similar symptoms to those caused by, or relieved by the IgG elimination diet. So some people use them alongside each other, and they both can be beneficial in different ways. Although I did mention the study earlier that, in IBS with diarrhea, it was found that the IgG diet was better than the low FODMAP diet. So I think everybody, is different. And I think, you were talking about your speaker from last week, which absolutely says that we see that too. Everybody's pattern of food reactivities that have positive reactions is different and unique to them. And for some people, a low FODMAP diet is a better option, or an option that is often used alongside.
Fantastic. Becky Carroll, watch out now. Becky's got great questions always under that hat. Becky Carroll, what are the beliefs behind what causes intolerances? Are they mainly hereditary? Are you seeing more intolerances today than when you started with York? We kind of covered the intolerances getting kind of more prevalent these days. But that's interesting. Yeah. What are the beliefs behind what causes them in the first place? Is there a genetic?
I'm sure that, I mean, I don't think it's been proven, but I'm sure there will be some genetic links with food intolerances. I mean, there certainly are in terms of, some reactions, but you might, certainly in our family, cow's milk is something that my son struggles with, my husband struggles with, I struggle with. But so I think, in terms of what causes intolerances, we've already talked about, the processed food elements of that. And I think in general, more intolerances are being seen today, whether that's because people are more aware and they're talking about it, and because there are solutions like YorkTest that are on offer. I don't know, but I do believe that there are more intolerances today than when we started back when I started back with YorkTest in 2005. And certainly we're seeing people struggling with a lack of support for their symptoms.
Great question. Thanks, Becky. I think that was actually asked at 8:27, so I've gone back a bit of time. Sarah, sorry, Sarah. I don't know where I got Nicola from, Sarah, but Sarah has come back from Affinity Bodywork soft tissue therapist. Is leaky gut proven or a theory? Lots of medical professionals don't entertain it as a condition.
Yeah, it's whether it. I mean, leaky gut exists, and in the impact of intestinal permeability is absolutely clear. And it is something that is talked about widely in the literature, and it's not just about IgG testing, it's about in general. I mean, I talked earlier about, the recent article about the impact on, exercise and gut microbiology, and that talks widely in that article, and that was a systematic review of many different studies, and that talked widely about intestinal permeability. So I think that there is, and there are tests that you can carry out to show that, a gut is more leaky or not. So I think, again, if you talk to nutritional therapists, again, they will, focus on gut healing and probiotics, and I guess it's difficult to imagine. It's not like, the lining has been punctured with holes. It's just that the gap junctions between the cells are more permeable because they're less protected. The immunology is, maybe compromised. Your microbiology isn't optimized, and therefore, the flow of nutrients from your gut into your bloodstream, and the flow of products from your gut microbiology in and out of from your gut and your bloodstream is compromised, and that's what I understand as leaky gut, and that is real for a lot of people. Hopefully that's a helpful answer.
There's a problem today because, again, I mean, I sound like a bit of an old geezer, just whinging, a grumpy old man, but people are very quick to dismiss things these days, aren't they? It's either black or white, it's yes or no. It's tricky. It's fashionable to put stuff down without just looking, or maybe it depends on what we mean by, leaky gut, which is what you've just done. First of all, let's kind of define it and then argue whether it's kind of a thing or not. So anyway, I hope that helps, Sarah, and I apologise for getting your name wrong.
Yeah, and I think was it Sarah that's just put down there saying leaky gut was completely dismissed by my consultants. I was treated for it by a medical herbalist and made a world of difference. I was fobbed off.
Yes, there we go.
And that absolutely rings very true, and I'm really pleased that you've been able to be supported with that. I think you're absolutely right. The things like that are quite often dismissed. And they aren't black and white. I mean, when you think about the immune system is incredibly complex, and when you're talking about an IgG antibody, it's not just one antibody, it's four. They've all got different functions, they've all got different aspects. You've got their impact with complement, you've got Fc gamma receptor impact, you've got the cytokines, the T cell responses, you've got IgG links with autoimmune diseases, and when you put that in a big picture, we're just talking about one little bit of a jigsaw, from all of that. So it's that isn't black and white either. The immune system isn't black and white.
And I think, Sarah, something we were talking about off air as well, because YorkTest has been around for such a long time and developed stuff, then what was happening maybe 10, 15 years ago could be different to, what's been perfected and changed now. Because Sarah does say interesting. I think YorkTest has moved on loads since I did it. We mentioned this a little bit off air because IgG testing has been criticized in the past, but I wondered if you could summarize again this whole blocking thing you mentioned, which YorkTest does and other places don't do.
Yeah. So if you think, I'm really interested in, I'll answer that, but I'm really interested in what Sarah's just said about that hypnotherapy app, actually, because there's a lot of evidence that gut-directed hypnotherapy is beneficial alongside IgG testing and low FODMAP for IBS. And I think that's something that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that, Sarah.
You're going to have to expand now on what gut-directed hypnotherapy is. I've got an image, and I don't think that's what it is.
Yeah, I think hypnotherapy is obviously hypnotherapy in terms of a function. is able to help people with IBS. So it's, you know, you might be visualizing that your gut is like a river and it's flowing better, or it's, you know, and I'm not an expert in this, so I really don't know, but there are ways of like using meditation and hypnotherapy to actually help your gut function, because in the end, your gut is your second brain. You know, the sort of interactions that are going on, there's more you know, flow of nerves from your gut to the brain and your brain to the gut, and so it really is you know, there is so many links there, and I think, you know, that can be something that can be helpful alongside, you know, used alongside the IgG guided elimination diet particularly.
Very interesting. That's interesting coming from you, because you're such an evidence-based kind of professional, and I would have been very quick with my over cynical attitude to go hypnotherapy, but there is links, isn't there, a lot between, like you say, IBS and the level of stress in the body and the chemicals that are released and all this sort of stuff. So if you're hitting it through hypnotherapy, that would make sense. Yeah,
there are, and you know, I think that's, as I say, that's another tool, you know, alongside the IgG elimination diet for people with IBS, and I think you need to use a few of those tools, I think, to get to the bottom of things. You talked about our testing, and I mean, we're really proud of our laboratory, and you know, we use an ELISA-based method, which is an enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay. So it's a standard sort of technology that is used widely in hospitals to measure things in blood. You know, things like proteins and antibodies and infectious diseases and things like that. But I think what we do is when we designed the test, obviously that was back in 1998, and we manufacture it now. We wanted to make sure that we weren't over-recording results and reporting things that were, you know, false positives. So we kind of use a proprietary blocker in our system. I can talk through the method if we've got time. I'm very mindful of time, actually, but you know, we've got a few slides up. You know, I think if we go up, I'll just briefly
go with the slides.
Yeah. So if you go back a few, so just to the next one, actually, this one here. So if we look at this slide here, the next one after that.
Next one.
Sorry, the few before that one. That's it. That's
that one. Okay, I'll bring it up on the full screen. Again, if you watch this podcast, then obviously we're conscious you can't see the slides, but this is where you go to YouTube, where all the videos are there for everyone on YouTube. So if you're interested in the topic, then you can see the slide which Dr. Hart will be talking about.
Yeah.
Here we go.
So essentially, in each little well that we coat with a different high quality food stuff, which is blocked very clearly, so to avoid false positive results. So when your actual blood sample comes into the laboratory on a little stick, on a little wand, that is centrifuged down into a liquid diluent. We manufacture our tests ourselves, and the actual testing process takes about 2.5 hours. So in each of the little dishes, which I'll show you the wells of 96 little dishes in a moment, you can see that the blue circles at the bottom are, say, for example, cow's milk. Then we come in with our sample and our blood sample. You can see the little pink claw on top of the blue circle. That's I always think of an antibody as being like a claw. It's grabbing onto that cow's milk proteins. If you've got those antibodies, those IgG antibodies in your blood, then that will capture onto the cow's milk protein, and then we come in with a linking reagent and a substrate. And if all this link comes together, then we get a colour change in the little well. And if you look at the next slide, we can see the 96 wells in all the little dishes have got all different foodstuffs dried down. And we use this blocking agent to actually prevent non-specific binding and reduce to eliminate false positive results. So you can see here we've got calibrators in the first column, A, B, C, D. Those are our positive or negative, low positive, high positive, and blank calibrators and quality controls that have to pass specification before we release the results from the laboratory. And then we actually measure the degree of yellow colour in each of these little wells using a spectrophotometer. So it's a machine that measures automatically the degree of yellow colour in each one. And then we actually scale that up, and the next slide just shows an example results, I believe. If you just have a look at that, then we actually put everything on a scale. Each particular food we put on a scale of 0 to 100. You can see this individual's got like hazelnut of 27, sheep's milk, wheat, and then you can actually look and see which are high reactivity, so the ones in red, which are borderline, the ones in amber, and then the ones that have got normal reactivity. So it's really clear and helpful for you to be able to prioritise, or your practitioner to prioritise what to remove from your diet.
I'm going to have to do this, aren't I? It's the problem with having such great guests. I end up having sleep studies for 6 weeks. I end up doing all sorts of things, but it's fascinating. I love it because I am a cynical person through the things I've seen come and go in the health and fitness industry. But, it's lovely having a chance to speak to the scientific director and looking at the science behind it, because it just paints a totally different picture than the impression I must admit I did have erroneously about a lot of when it comes to food intolerance tests. It's very exciting. Yeah. Great stuff.
Yeah.
So let's talk briefly then. We are finishing, unfortunately, because time's coming up. But if I can just get rid of that, if people listening to this podcast, working with people who they suspect would benefit from a conversation with you guys, what should be the port of call? Where should they direct you, or where should they direct their clients? Sorry. And what would the clients expect when they do contact you? Let's bring up a little shot of the YorkTest again, for example. So I guess you'd direct them towards the webpage, would you?
Yeah, you'd either direct towards our webpage, which is YorkTest.com. But really, come and talk to us. We've got a really great, friendly team. And I think on the last slide of the slides I provided, we've got the details there, which you can put up.
Okay.
So if you call us, and we've got a great friendly team headed up by Gemma, who will direct you as practitioners to, our fantastic practitioner wellness hub, where you can access, can order tests, you can access results for your clients, you can, find out lots of resources as well, lots of guidebooks and information as well. So as a practitioner, so you can, as I say, you can look at our website on YorkTest.com. You can call our dedicated account team, or our general account team on 01904 410 410, or email client.support@yorktest.com. If you've got any further questions for me, I'm really happy to be contacted too, on jill.hart@yorktest.com. I think, from a practitioner point of view, we're really proud of the support that we provide. We can provide shipment of blood collection kits directly, because it's all accessible. It's all finger prick blood tests. So we can arrange shipment of the blood collection kits directly to your clients. We've got the wellness hub. We also offer a different branding, so we can offer bespoke branding to your individual practice too, if that's what you're interested in, or unbranded or YorkTest branded too. So we've got lots of different ways of working together with practitioners to help support their businesses too.
Amazing. And is there maybe some literature that can be downloaded or something to have in the clinic that could be on walls for, that's such a powerful way of doing it, isn't it? When people are waiting in the waiting room and reading something.
Yeah, we've got some great resources. Actually, we've got some great leaflets, brochures, information, etc., and all that can be accessed through the team at YorkTest and through the practitioner wellness hub, which has been a great addition to our business to help support practitioners.
Amazing. That's I feel bad doing this, but Glenn Murphy has come in and said, excuse the pun, but food for thought. Thanks, Glenn. Yeah, you've got a habit of doing that, haven't you? But no, definitely food for thought. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Gill Hart, for giving it your time. Really enlightening, really interesting.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for all the great questions and really interesting conversation we've had today. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Appreciate it. So don't go away anywhere, Jill, if you can. I'm just going to sign off people from the lounge, and then I'll just thank you briefly for a couple of minutes before we go our separate ways for the evening. Thanks for joining us, people. People who are joining us live, thanks as always. It's so nice to have people joining us live because we live in a world where it's all very on demand and TV's on demand and all that. So it's great to see, really appreciate people giving up their time to join us and share their experiences as well. Thank you, Sarah and other people, Catherine, everybody who shared their experiences. It is your personal information, so it's really nice for you to share it in these discussions, which are downloaded about nearly 2,500 times once they go as a podcast. So thanks for sharing that with everybody. Next week is the final part of our focus on nutrition. Now, newsflash, next week it's going to be on Monday at 7 p.m. Okay, so not a Tuesday at 8 o'clock. It's very rare we do this, but on Tuesday I will be on a boat on the way to Amsterdam. Just to get my regular shipment. No, not at all. Just to go and experience a nice cruise, apparently, with my parents and family. And then we're going to have a couple of days in Amsterdam. So because of that, Monday next week, if you want to join us live, Monday at 7 o'clock. It'll be quite interesting to see whether that gets more or less people, whether it's a more convenient time. And we're going to be joined by special guest Catherine Stewart, who's a registered dietitian with a master's in sports nutrition. You may know her if you are familiar with the Athletic Female, the great team of Gwania Donnelly, Emma Brockwell, and Dr. Helen McElroy, have been on the show before. Catherine Stewart has worked with them, providing guest speaks and all sorts of information. Wonderful person to follow, even greater username, at edible_evidence. Edible evidence. What a great, I wish I'd got that. Amazing. So you can catch up with Catherine at edible_evidence on Twitter and Facebook if you want a little pre-read on what Catherine's all about. But that'll be next Monday at 7 p.m. So do join us then. Adverts will go out and the podcast for this episode will be uploaded in the next couple of days. So once again, thank you to my guest, Dr. Gill Hart from the YorkTest Laboratories. Hope this has been enjoyable, people. And if I don't see you next Monday, then do please go to the podcast and leave a little review, leave a rating, because it helps the great information from our guests get out to a wider audience, which is what it's all about. All right, take care, people.